This evening, members of Peace Action Wisconsin's Disarmament Committee are going to be testifying concerning the government's proposal for a new nuclear weapons program and the development of that program. It's called Complex Transformation. And my name is Julie Burns-Enslow. I'm a staff person with Peace Action Wisconsin, and I will be the first to testify. Just to put this into context, I grew up in the 1950s Cold War era in fear of nuclear weapons. This was the mentality of that era, fear. The era of home bomb shelters, duck and cover drills, and nuclear nightmares. Having spent my adult life working for the abolition of nuclear weapons, it is clear that real security is found in the elimination of all weapons of mass destruction. This is a deeply moral issue. There can be no rationale for the production or the use of weapons that can destroy life on Earth as we know it. It now seems insane that the United States is beginning to rebuild the arsenal as we are gradually reducing it since the end of the Cold War. Let us put this push for new nuclear weapons in the context that this is not a deterrence policy, but a move towards actually using these weapons. The Bush administration's proposal for the Reliable Replacement Warhead and Complex Transformation, formerly called Complex 2030, has plans to rebuild a new nuclear weapons complex and arsenal, and this must be abandoned. This proposed $150 billion facility would produce 125 new nuclear weapon cores a year for the next 25 years, equaling 3,125 new nuclear weapons, at the same time that they're talking about dismantling some of the arsenal. This money should be going towards non-proliferation programs, securing nuclear materials, and developing clean, renewable, and safe alternative energy sources. In January 2008, it was reported that a new manifesto by senior military officers and strategists from the United States and Europe, including U.S. General John Shalakashvili, former chair of U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff and the ex-supreme commander of NATO forces in Europe, had declared in this manifesto, quote, "The West must be prepared to carry out preemptive nuclear strikes to halt the spread of nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction." So they're saying we need to strike countries that are not nuclear, but may be preparing to develop them, to use nuclear weapons in order to prevent their use. This makes no sense logically. And it goes on to say that a first strike nuclear option is an indispensable instrument, and that the first use of nuclear weapons must remain in the quiver of escalation as the ultimate instrument to prevent the use of weapons of mass destruction. This is the opposite of a policy of Cold War deterrence. It is a policy of first use against non-nuclear weapons. What this country needs to be doing is to take all nuclear weapons off of hair trigger alert, to declare a no first strike policy, to ratify the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, which has never been ratified by the U.S. Senate, and to live up to our own treaty obligations for total nuclear disarmament under Article 6 of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. This is not a game we're playing. This is a matter of life and death for this planet. We have a moral obligation to our children, to our grandchildren, and to all future generations to leave them a planet that is free of weapons of mass destruction and a future that is free of nuclear nightmares. Thank you. The next person to testify will be Mr. George Martin, who is the Program Director for Peace Action Wisconsin and co-chair of United for Peace and Justice nationally.
I give this testimony based upon my personal experiences as a national co-chair of United for Peace and Justice, a member of the U.S. Advisory Board of Mayors for Peace, a delegate to the World Peace Council and spokesperson for the Anti-War Assembly of the 2007 World Social Forum. All of these national and international organizations work toward abolishing nuclear weapons, obviously inclusive of the U.S. modernizing its existing nuclear weapons. In fact, the U.S. is itself in blatant violation of its own nuclear non-proliferation treaty obligation to eliminate its vast and sophisticated nuclear arsenal. How does the international community feel about the U.S. modernizing its existing nuclear weapons? Well, I'll tell you, the U.S. should demonstrate international leadership by not modernizing its existing nuclear weapons, but by fulfilling its disarmament obligation under its own nuclear non-proliferation treaty to abolish nuclear weapons. I participated in the following events that reflect the international community's consensus to abolish nuclear weapons. In May 2005, the UN Nuclear Non-Proliferation Review in New York City drew 45,000 people and organizations from all over the world calling for nuclear disarmament. Many of us here testifying tonight participated in that event. Mayors for Peace, founded by the mayors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, gathered 161 representatives from 127 countries for its Vision 2020 campaign to abolish nuclear weapons by the year 2020. I helped lead the march and spoke at the rally in Central Park. This testimony is being done in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Our mayor, Tom Barrett, a former U.S. congressman, is a member of Mayors for Peace. Mayors for Peace now has 2,170 member cities from 120 countries. In January 2006, the World Social Forum met in Caracas, Venezuela. I facilitated the anti-war assembly session of 20 countries that consensed to nuclear abolition. And we were all very encouraged by the fact that all of South America and the Caribbean were nuclear weapons free. In December 2007, the Stop the War Conference on the Middle East was in London, England. I spoke and called for a nuclear-free Middle East. 3,500 delegates from 3,700 countries stood in standing ovation. Our U.S. policies have allowed Israel to have nuclear weapons, destabilizing the entire region. In January 2007, the World Social Forum met in Nairobi, Kenya. As spokesperson for the peace movements of 50 countries, I reported our consensus call to action to the Assembly of Social Movements. This was translated into 31 languages. When I called for no nuclear weapons, there was thunderous applause and immediate consensus from 35,000 delegates, representing 111 countries. Internationally, we the U.S. are seen as hypocrites by not fulfilling our own NPT treaty to abolish nuclear weapons, but by moving in the opposite direction, by modernizing our own existing nuclear weapons and publicly making plans to develop and produce new ones. Nuclear weapons are the greatest mass threat to us, our children, and generations to come. The world has not forgotten the U.S. dropping atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the unnecessary horror that resulted. Nuclear weaponry is unnecessary and sends a dangerous message to the rest of the world. As an American citizen, representative of the above organizations, an international worker, I urge that you not authorize any modernizing or retooling of the U.S. nuclear arsenal. Thank you.